Proper reefer freight haulage relies completely on proper circulation within the box of the reefer trailer. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to achieve that and how to properly haul reefer freight without getting a freight claim. You require a chute along the roof for proper air circulation, and this chute ensures circulation, which ensures that drivers won't have freight claims. It all relies on proper air circulation. So excuse my crude diagram here, and excuse my wooden pointer. We like to use wood for everything here in Northern Ontario. But here's the reefer unit. It generates the air, travels along the chute, drops out the chute behind the freight, and hits the back doors, drops to the floor, and is recycled back up to the front of the reefer unit, inhaled and temperature corrected. And that creates the circulation that you want inside the trailer, because the freight is surrounded then by air of the proper temperature. This is how a reefer floor, most reefer floors are configured. There are channels within the floor for the air to circulate back up into the front. Now lately we're seeing a lot of flat reefer floors, and then pallet placement becomes particularly important, because if you turn all the pallets sideways, it blocks the air back to the trailer. So you've got to chimney block it, one sideways and one straight in, and then the air can travel up through the straight in pallets and still circulate. And these days too, a lot of pallets are four-way pallets, so you can get into them from either side, as long as there's a path for the air to travel back up to the reefer unit. And this is a reefer inspection door, a produce door. There's a little screen in there. You've seen these. The better reefer trailers have these. And you can pop that open, stick your thermometer probe in there, close the door, wait a couple minutes for the probe to calibrate, whip it open and check the temperature, just to make sure the back of your trailer is at the same temperature or a couple degrees within what the box is set at up front. Reefer trailers are designed to keep the freight at a controlled temperature. Now the freight going into the trailer needs to be the temperature that the shipper wishes it to travel at. The shipper needs to pre-cool, always. The shipper needs to pre-cool, let me stress this, the freight, because reefer trailers are not designed to cool freight or heat freight. They are designed to maintain a temperature of the freight. But if you put in a hot load and try to cool it down and suck the moisture out, it's not going to happen, and you'll get a freight claim. The freight has to be pre-cooled on the dock before it goes on the trailer. Now, because you want to ensure this, you need to be on the dock when the freight is being loaded. And you want to make sure that the freight has been pre-cooled. Best way to do that is to pulp all the skids going onto the trailer. And you need one of these pulp thermometers to do that. Now, this isn't a cheap one. This isn't a $20 pulper that you bought at the TA. This is a good quality pulper. You buy them in produce houses around Salinas or Bakersfield or something like that. They're about $100, but they're worth every penny. They'll save your butt time and time again against claims. So you want to be on the dock when they are loading your reefer freight. Now, I know what you're going to say. All sorts of places won't let you on the dock when they're loading. This is wrong, but you know what? A lot of times that's not up to the driver. If they're not going to let you on the dock, don't get into a fist fight over it. Just accept what they say. But when you get your bills, mark that on the bills. You want to mark on the bills that you were not allowed on the dock. Not only does this alleviate you getting the claim from not having the freight being the right temperature because you weren't allowed to pulp it, it also alleviates the fact that the count may be wrong on the trailer, and that makes the shipper totally responsible for the count because you weren't on there to check the count. So be sure to put that on your bills when you close the doors and leave the dock, that you weren't allowed on that dock to check anything. And something else you weren't allowed on the dock to do is secure the freight, and that's another real problem. Load stability is another big problem, and it's another reason you should be on the dock, because some skids are tippy. You want to ensure the loading pattern that you're going to achieve to get your weight farther back in the trailer so you can scale the thing. All sorts of shippers love to shove everything towards the nose, hope it all works out, and it's just your problem after that. And you don't want that. You want to be able to go to the cat scale after you're loaded, maybe have to slide your axles a couple of holes one way or the other, maybe move your fifth wheel a couple of notches, but you don't want to have a loading problem where you find out you're 36,000 on the drives and there's nothing you can do about it because the shipper's loaded it incorrectly. It's critical to be on the dock. Something else you've got to do, now you can tell as soon as you pull away from the dock to close the doors, but when you close those doors, you need to see that the reefer freight has at least 4 feet, 5 feet between the back of the freight and the back of the doors. And this room is essential because the air coming out of the chute needs to be able to hit the floor and travel in those grooves underneath the freight to get back to the reefer unit. The reefer unit cycles that return air back up into the unit, patrols it for temperature, the sensors adjust the temperature of the air going back out the chute, and it's a continual cycle. But that return air needs to be able to get back up to the reefer, and that's why you can't load hard to the back doors. You've got to leave space for circulation. It's so important. Something else you need to remember, and this is just a side tip, is when you get to the other end, when you're delivering your load, when you're emptied out, when the trailer's completely empty out, get away from the dock and leave the trailer doors open for a while. And what you're doing there is trying to get rid of the moisture that will accumulate in the trailer over the course of the trip. You want to dry the trailer out inside. Open the front vents, open the back doors, and let the air flow there for a couple hours at least, because that moisture can seep into the insulation of the trailer. It'll ruin the insulation of the trailer, and that means the trailer will lose its insulating ability and it'll be no good anymore. And the insulation will suck up that water and soak up weight, and the trailer will gain thousands of pounds over the course of its lifetime in excess moisture soaked into the walls. And that makes the trailer virtually useless because then it can't haul any weight anymore. Now there are 3 basic different types of reefer freight. There's frozen, there's heated, and there's fresh. And generally fresh pays the best because it takes the most amount of babysitting, frankly, is what it boils down to. So reefer freight, reefer loads of produce should be paying better than hauling like a load of frozen, for instance. Occasionally meat will travel on a fresh temperature trailer. Usually these days they freeze it. So pretty much all the produce is about the only kind of fresh product that you'll haul. Now hauling produce is a difficult thing to do because there are so many different types of produce and they all run at different temperatures. So you need a chart basically to keep track of what temperature everything needs to run at. So you need to set the temperature at the recommended temperature for that product, whether it's like strawberries and raspberries, for instance, should run about 34 degrees, but bananas need to run about 46 degrees. Everything's got a different temperature. Your company should provide you with a chart of what temperature all of these different products need to run at. You need to pay attention to that. You need to set the temperature according to the product that you've got on. Very important, and that's another way to eliminate a claim. Let's talk about claims for a minute as well. As produce travels, most produce shippers will put what's called a Ryan inside the trailer. And what this Ryan does, it's a little battery operated recording device. It draws a little graph and it will record the temperature inside the trailer for the entire course of the trip. And this is to ensure that the product is held at the desired temperature throughout the trip. Now, can you run your reefer on stop start? No, not really. Not if you've got something sensitive on like lettuce or berries. You've got to leave it on continuous run because you don't want that graph going up and down where the receiver can point on the graph and go, oh, there, you exceeded your temperature. There's a claim. Now, years ago, reefer guys like myself used to shut the unit off at night because they didn't want the rattling of the reefer next to their heads as they were trying to sleep. These Ryan recorders have eliminated that for sure. So you've got to be aware of these Ryans, and you've got to be diligent with babysitting the reefer because if you screw up, the Ryan will record it and you'll get a claim. So Ryans can be your friend or they can be your enemy depending on how diligent you are. You can't let the reefer run out of fuel it'll show up on the Ryan and you'll get a claim. Produce houses and grocery chains love to file claims against a produce load because whether it's true or not, it'll reduce, they'll put in a claim thinking it'll reduce their transportation costs. Instead of having to pay the truck $4,000, they can chop it down to $3,000 just by filing a claim against the load. But if you've got this Ryan and the Ryan draws a true line, they've got no claim. It's as simple as that, and you're out of hot water. There are a couple misconceptions with these reefer trailers, and these misconceptions are usually held by shippers or receivers. Let me tell you the truth about that. All sorts of guys will have you pre-cool a reefer before you load, and there's no harm in doing this. You'll use up a little fuel. Better not to ruffle their feathers, but sit out in their yard with the doors closed and pre-cool the trailer, and then when they back in, you've got to open the doors to bump the dock, and the moment you open the doors, all the air rushes back out. But you can't tell a shipper that. He's convinced that the cold air stays in the trailer and the hot air stays in the atmosphere somewhere. But better not to argue with him. But just for your own information, the moment you open the doors, you've lost the temperature. The other thing to remember is when you back into the receiver's doors, all sorts of guys, all sorts of receivers will tell you to leave the reefer running. Don't do it because, again, once you open the doors, the temperature is lost, but the chute has nothing to bounce the air off of. The doors are open, and you can't pre-cool a warehouse. So what happens is the trailer is pumping out air, the return air is going back to the unit, the sensors are going, oh, it's way off, it doesn't know the doors are open, and the reefer will often kick into high speed, get excited because it's losing control of the temperature, and just run like a sucker to try to correct the temperature, not understanding that the doors are open. So there's no point in running the reefer with the doors open. And in fact, you can hurt the engine in some cases. So no matter what the shipper or the receiver says, after you've bumped the dock, go shut the unit off. And that'll help hurry them up in getting the load off as well. It'll work to your advantage. But don't run the reefer with the doors open. It could hurt the unit. Reefer units these days are a very complex machine. So you need to have someone train you on the particular unit that you're going to be operating. Have someone from the yard come out and show you the way this unit works. Be sure you've got it under control, and take a manual on how the unit works with you so you've got something to refer to. All these units these days are completely different. They change them every couple of years. It'll all depend on what year of unit you've got as to how it works. But be properly trained in produce. It's not something where they should just throw you a reefer trailer and wish you good luck. A lot of these mega carriers will do that. But don't do it because you'll be the guy that ends up with the claim because they always like stuff to run to the bottom. You'll be the guy they blame at the end of the day. Reefer haulage is complicated stuff, and you want to know what you're doing so you don't get a claim. Have someone explain it completely to you. If possible, take a senior driver with you when you're loading for the first couple times. Do whatever it takes to cover your butt because there's the right way to do it and there's the expensive way to do it. And here at Smart Trucking, we don't want to see you have to do it the expensive way. We want you to do it the right way so it doesn't cost you money. It's as simple as that. Speaking of the expensive way, let me tell you another Lettuce King story. Lettuce King stories seem to be popular. But let me tell you about an expensive trip that he had. Now, he didn't end up having to front the bill, but this was the case. Let me tell you the story. Back many, many years ago, the Reefer King was contracted to a carrier that supplied the trailer. This was not using the Lettuce King's trailer. They wanted him to use their trailer. So he got out west, he put a load of broccoli on and started heading back east. And the reefer kept quitting on him. And he couldn't get it running. It quit on a Sunday for about the third or fourth time. It quit on a Sunday. He was in the middle of nowhere. He couldn't get a hold of anyone at the dealerships to get it repaired. And he was just tired of messing with it, frankly. Now, he had a load of broccoli on, and broccoli travels with a good thick layer of ice on the top of the broccoli. And the idea is that this will help keep the whole load cool, of course. So the Lettuce King was a runner. He was a serious runner, and he was in Nebraska somewhere. He decided, the heck with it. I can't get this unit fixed. I can't figure it out for myself what's wrong with it. I'm just going to go for it. So he put both sticks to the wall, pedal to the metal, somewhere around Grand Island, and he just sailed for it. Got into Toronto in just amazing time. But it was summertime, it was hot out, he lost all the ice, and the broccoli had started to flower. All the ice had melted, the broccoli had started to flower. So of course the receiver took one look at the load and refused it. And then the fight was on, because it wasn't the Lettuce King's trailer. He hadn't been able to get a hold of anybody, including the carrier, because it was the weekend. And the fight was on as to who got the claim. But they were trying to blame it on the Lettuce King. I never did hear the end of that story, but I know him well enough to know he wouldn't have taken the hit. So, but it's something easily happens. We don't want to see you in that situation. So be careful with this stuff. Learn as much as you can. Take care. Keep the rubber side down. I hope this is helpful.
Real quick before we end today's video, be sure not to miss next week's upload when we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about how to load produce. Thank you drivers so much. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.